Book 5. 1. Now, how Jabez defeated the islanders, and Bimelus the Amathai, and which colonies he sent. As also the war of the Biblians against the Beretians and the errors of the Biblians are related in the 4th book. Sanchuniathon says that after Belirus died, Amoas, the son of Belirus, who led an army against the Teartessians and was defeated, ordered towns situated by the sea to prepare ships and an army, intending to avenge the defeat which he had received from the Teartessians, and to bring the colonies in Ursiphonia and Tenga to submission. The colonies therefore sent corn and a fleet, but the Sorati sent spearmen and archers. 2. But he ordered those who had arrived at Amoas to pitch camp, distributed according to nations, towns and tribes. The Bibli therefore pitched their camp in the town of the Sotians, the Bereti and Aradi in the plain situated near Bidkoroth, the Gigantus in the country of the Dibonites, the Sidonians and Sorati in the city, the islanders at the harbor, but the long ships, since contrary winds prevented them from sailing to Sidon, were opposite the citadel which belongs to the king at Dibon. But when Amoa asked why no one from the Tyrians had arrived, the king of the Aradi informed him that the Tyrians were indeed in arms, but that, leaving the Sidonians, they would help the Teartessians, so that they alone would allow him to enter Tartessus and trade there, but would forbid the other cities from entering. The colonies in Tenga and Ursiphonia, having followed the example of the Tyrians, had made an alliance with the Teartessians. But the exile of Daborpus, the Tyrian, said that the Tyrians had also sent 30 long ships to the Teartessians. 3. For this cause Amoas was very angry with the Tyrians. Yet he did not at first seek their destruction, but strove to win him over to himself by many entreaties. But they refused to pay tribute to the Sidonian camp, for they would never desert the race of Melicothus, the founders of the city of Tyre. Having been repeatedly warned, when the Tyrians continued to refuse, Amoas sent Molcoimus, the son of Abardus, with a fleet against the Teartessians, while he himself besieged Tyre. But when the Tyrians broke out at night, a great multitude of the Sidonians were killed, and Amoas fled in a chariot to Sidon, where he found a fleet, which had also been defeated by the Teartessians on the island of Citium, and was wounded and died soon after, in the 60th year after he had reigned. Abardus also died, consumed with grief because his son Molcoimus had died in a naval battle against the Teartessians. And Abardus reigned 13 years. 4. The Bibli chose Hanno, the son of Molcoimus, a very young man, as their king, who concealed his weakness by riding a horse, and reigned for 55 years. And won the favor of the Bibli. 5. In place of Amoa, Jasimon was substituted, who received peace from the Tyrians on the condition that he should allow him to trade in Sidon and in the towns of the Sidonians, and that they should cede to them the possession of the colonies which the Sidonians had established in Ursiphonia and Tenga, and that he should promise never to send a fleet beyond the island of Miletus, nor into those regions which were under the control of the Tyrians, nor to Tartessus. Jasimon reigned for 20 years, and during his reign the peace with the Tyrians was not violated. But while the latter were living in misery and were reduced to poverty, Jasimon acquired great riches for himself. 6. Opposite the island of Mylitansium is the island of Mazariza, which takes its name from a mountain that burns in it. There is a strait to it, which if anyone sails through, will very quickly reach Ursiphonia. Otherwise, it is necessary to sail around the whole island. But the people who inhabited this strait were so inhospitable that no one could sail past it without danger. The Tyrians therefore established colonies on both shores of the strait, in order to make the passage safe, a town on the island, and a tower and fortifications on the bank that was opposite the island. But a multitude of barbarians descended and destroyed the tower and fortifications, and massacred the sentries, except one, who fled into the town, and informed the townspeople of the barbarian invasion. But since the townspeople were in great fear lest the barbarians should also storm the city, the Tyrians sent all their forces and those of the islanders to their aid. At first, indeed, the Tyrian army defeated the inhabitants of the island. But while they were boasting of victory and not observing military discipline, the barbarians inflicted the greatest defeat on them at night. At the same time, some of the barbarians, sailing through the harbor, set fire to 50 longships. 4,000 Tyrians were killed in this battle. But the food that was still on the ships having been burned up, there was a shortage of grain, so that many perished from hunger, until ships brought grain from Ursiphonia. At the same time the Tyrians repelled the enemy. But since the barbarians returned more often, it was necessary to fortify the town with a garrison. 7. Now Sidon, the son of Jasimon, when he heard that the Tyrians had been defeated at Mazariza, and that they were in want of money, promised to send them help. 30 longships and 3,000 soldiers, if they were willing to submit to the Sidonians again. The Tyrians gladly consented and subjected the city and islands to Sidon's power. Then, with the aid of Sidon, the Tyrians, the enemies of the Tyrians, were defeated in a short time on the island of Mazariza. In this way Sidon restored the rule of the Sidonians. He died after a reign of 40 years. Whether indeed he was taken by poison, or by piercing himself with the sword, I leave in doubt. 4. Seized with an incurable disease, he was weary of life. When Sidon died, Sitilbes reigned among the Sidonians. 8. In the 34th year of the reign of Sidon, Hanno, who had ruled the Biblians for 55 years, died. After his death, Herbes, the son of Hanno, reigned in the city of the Biblians for 32 years. During Sidon's reign, he maintained with the greatest diligence the friendship which his father had established with the Sidonians, and maintained a heavy armory of 1,000 soldiers and 10 ships, part of which he had kept ready for 6 years, so that he could make a great expenditure on military affairs. But after the death of Sidon, when Sitilbes, although the war in Mazariza had long been composed, nevertheless commanded the soldiers and ships of Herba, he refused to furnish an army. First, Sitilbes therefore decided to besiege Byblus. But when he heard that the Aradians and Beretians would also resist his will, he acted more gently and sought to establish peace with them. 9. Herbes, however, sent a colony to that part of Cilicia which overlooks the island of the City. This region, devastated by the natives, had long been deserted. Some of the Tartessians, refugees from their homeland, asked for lands from the Tyrians, but when the Tyrians were sent to Byblos, and the Byblos deliberated about assigning lands, they gave them that devastated colony. The Byblos therefore sent Ocallathon with a fleet, the guardian of the founding of the city. Ocallathon surrounded the city with walls, and drove out the inhabitants of the region, although they outnumbered the colonists. For when the cavalry rushed upon the barbarians, they very quickly retreated. Ocallathon, after he had waged war with the enemy for 10 years, the Byblos deserted him, for they had sent soldiers and ships to the besieged Tyrians. But when he observed that the neighboring peoples were very powerful, and that the walls had been demolished, he transferred the townspeople to the island of Citium, while he himself went to Byblos. They call the deserted city Tartessus or Tarsus, because the Tartessians had been its inhabitants. But Ocallathon, in his extreme old age, when the death of Cusaba's son was announced to him, was consumed with grief. 10. But Basanus, having been endowed with authority in the city of the Biblians, and desirous of reigning, slew Herba by night, and with many aids, seized the citadel and harbor, and the next day, having been created king by the people, won the favor of the Sidonians, who were the first to revenge Herba's death, granting him all that they asked. But Herba died after a reign of 32 years, in the 26th year after the kingdom of the Sidonians had returned to city Lb. But Basanus, who had slain Herba, was expelled from the city of the Biblians in the 51st year of his reign, because he had no reason for the insolence of his people. City Lb reigned for 42 years altogether. After his death, Agathon, the son of City Lb, held the kingdom of the Sidonians for 38 years, and sent a large fleet to Mazaria, and founded 5 colonies, to which he might bring out an abundance of people. 1,000 colonists also settled Ursiphonia, whose cities had previously been unable to resist the Artesians, who often invaded this region. Opposite Ursiphonia are 2 islands, Cyton and Gadila, fertile and endowed with an abundance of material. Therefore, he built a city on the strait between them. He also ordered the Biblians and Aradians to send colonies to Tenga, and the Beretians to restore the port. All these things aroused the envy of the Tyrians, but they could not prevent them. 11. In those times many of the Cerratus committed piracy, lying in wait for ships returning from the islands, and when they found them laden with riches, they took away the merchandise and carried off the sailors into slavery. For this reason, angry with the Cerratus, Agathon gathered a large army and stormed the city of the Ascalonians. But in Aradi and Bybli, but especially in Tyre, he left altogether 1,000 soldiers, fortified the city with a garrison, and set out towards Gaza, where he died on the way. Having been killed at night in the praetorium by Melcalix Menneus, who led the Tyrian forces, and, having slain the king, he set out with the Tyrian army as quickly as possible for Ascalon. From that time on the city was long under the control of the Tyrians. Then the Sidonians and the Arades and the Bereti took to the ships, but most of them perished. But in this war against the Sorates no one of the Bybli was present. But after the death of Agathon, Asmoneus, a very young man, who was in poor health, ruled the Sidonians.